Hello, my friends. It's Dr. Abby on Tell Me the Stories of Jesus, the place where we gather on Sundays or any time of the week where you're watching me, and we'll learn about stories in the Bible. I talk to young girls and boys like myself, no, much younger than me, but you're all my friends, and we'll learn from the Bible stories of Jesus. Today, we're talking about the widow's mite. The widow's mite. And you'll find that in the Bible in the book of Mark, chapter 12. Mark chapter 12 from verses 41 to 44. Now what happened? Jesus was still here on earth with us, and he went to let's call it the church. He went there, and the Bible says that he stood close to where people were giving offering. They call it the treasury. He stood close to that place, and he was watching how people gave money in church. He was watching them, and he saw different people come give money. You know, they had a lot to give. They gave in abundance, and he was watching how they gave the money. And then there comes this woman. The Bible calls her a poor widow. So she had two things qualifying her. She was poor and she was a widow, a woman. And she came, and the Bible said she had only 2 mites. That's the money they were spending there. But you could tell that what she had was very little. 2 mites, 2 coins, sums up to quadrants, whatever that means. It was little. But you know the unique thing? It was all she had. She didn't have in abundance like the others. She had only 2 mites. And what did she do? She put the 2 mites into what we'll call now the offering basket, and she gave it to God. You know, they were all given to God. And then Jesus called his disciples, and he told them that, do you know that that poor widow that gave her 2 mites, what she's done is more important? What she's done is more like acceptable. It gives God more joy than those that gave a lot out of the abundance that they have. She gave everything that she had. And that brings us to the end of the story this week. It's a short one, and then we'll learn from it again. You know, through the weeks we've been learning about giving. Today we're learning about that act where we give in church to God, yeah? So we bring our money, we give to God. And the first lesson, Jesus stood and was watching. He watched how they gave. That was his intention. He wasn't too particular about, how much, the quantity. It was how, the behavior of that giving. And he saw people bringing out of abundance to give. And then he saw somebody bring everything she had. She was poor. We've talked about people who don't have giving. We've talked about people who we really didn't know their status, how rich or poor they were. You know, the woman with the alabaster box, Dorcas, they gave, we don't know how rich or poor they were. We've learned about the Shunammite woman who was a notable woman, a rich woman. She gave out of abundance. So we've learned a lot. But here, it was a poor woman. And another difference, she was a widow. You know, we've talked about widows when Dorcas was giving to widows, yeah? So we've learned about people giving to widows. Now we're learning about widow giving, just like the widow of Zarephath, yeah? She was giving. But here, the Bible specially mentions that she was poor. So it means that no matter how little you have, if you genuinely love God, you will still find it in your heart to give. There is nothing wrong with giving some of what you have, but if you choose to give everything also, even better. Jesus was watching the heart, your motive for giving, your reason for giving. She was giving out of love. You know, do you give out of love, or are you giving because you want to show off? I'm so rich, I've got so much, I can give 10,000, I can give 1,000. No, that's not the motive for giving. If there is one lesson I want you to take away, And as we round up the year, your walk with God, when you want to give to God, give out of love. It's the same thing when you give to people. You give out of love, out of compassion. Yeah? Give out of your love. God has a lot. He really doesn't need your money, but it just shows that you love him. You're giving because it's your act. The same way last week we learned about praise and worship, giving that to God. Yeah, you give money out of your love, and God watches your motive, your heart, your how. And it's not in the quantity of what you give. It is the reason for giving it. So the widow, the poor widow, she didn't have so much, but what she had, she gave it willingly. Yes, and giving willingly, nobody needs to wind you up. If you don't want to give, that's fine, but when you give, remember, you're doing yourself a favor. But you give to God willingly, you give with a joyful heart, you give your all. And we've said it in the past, not just money, although here we're focusing on the money aspect, yeah? But anything you want to give, do it willingly. You want to give your time to God, don't do it grumbling. Do it willingly. How do you give your time to God? You come to serve in the church, you come to clean the church, you follow for evangelism to tell people about Christ, you go out to give to people in the winter, in the cold, maybe the church is organizing a program. Do it willingly. Anything you're doing for God, do it as unto God, but with joy, with willingness, and don't bluff about it. Don't be a show off. And if you have in abundance and you're giving out of abundance also, there is nothing wrong with it, but just remember your heart, the place of your heart when you're doing it, in humility, yeah? Humility, willingly, with joy, out of love, you give to God. And remember, she was a poor widow, but she didn't come empty-handed to the house of God. How many of you go to church without offering? If mommy, daddy does not remind you, you don't drop it. If your church teacher does not remember to say offering time, you take it back home. Rather than saying, auntie, uncle, I bought offering, I want to put it, for God. Don't go to the house of God empty-handed. Develop that culture out of love. Oh, I'm going to the house of God today. It's Sunday. I must give. You have 10 pounds, give 1 pound. You don't always have to collect from mommy and daddy all the time. Give what you have also. If a poor widow can give, I don't think anybody else has any excuse. So until we meet again, it's the second Sunday. We meet next week, the third Sunday, and we talk a bit more on Tell Me the Stories of Jesus, another episode on giving. It's bye-bye from me, Dr. Abby. Until next Sunday. Bye.